Coffee embodies you're better than ever.
Okay.
And I'll tell you why. Because I've always drank coffee. Like, you can go and buy the best scotches or the best wines or whatever, the best,
Yeah.
but how much are you going to pay for like the best bottle of wine? The $10,000?
$1 million. Yeah. Yeah.
So much,
yeah,
right?
That's right. Yeah.
But I can have a cup of coffee that's called a 90, it's above a 90 score of 90, which
Okay.
is like there's this coffee scoring system. I can have one of the best cups of coffee in the world for less than $1 a cup still.
That's incredible.
Welcome to the Better Than Ever podcast. Join me, Joseph Bailey, as we compare our current lives to the bad old days of the past. And we talk about what's better than ever. What if comparison isn't the thief of joy? What if it's the key? Russwood, how'd you get here? How'd you get to Abilene? I feel like everybody has a story about like how they got to Abilene.
Right.
Yes.
All roads lead to Abilene.
I know. And it's sort of like, well, everybody's kind of like, oh, we look down and put our hands in our pockets. I don't know. That it may be different with you. How'd you get here? What's your deal?
Man, it depends on how far we want to go back. I was in coffee for 7 years, transitioned out of coffee into teaching. And that was kind of my passion. My mother.
You mean like the coffee industry?
Yes.
Not a location called coffee. Not
No.
like Coffee, Texas.
And I was not swimming in coffee either.
Okay. All right.
No. So I was in the coffee industry,
Okay.
transitioned into teaching,
Okay.
taught for 5 years at a Christian school up in the Denver area,
What'd you teach?
economics, world history.
All right.
Yeah.
And did you coach at the same time?
I did not.
Sometimes I was talking to a college student yesterday and she's like, I want to teach history, but I'm not going to coach. And we're like, sure.
That's not possible
Sure. I
in
don't
most
think
of
that's
the
possible.
world.
Yeah. I don't
No.
think that's possible. Yeah.
No. I was lucky enough to teach in the social studies realm and
Yeah.
didn't have to coach. So that was
Nice.
great.
Yes.
Made the transition from there because we were heading into having our second child. And teaching does not pay a lot, turns out. At least
Turns out. Yep.
not at the high school level.
Right.
So, and especially not in Denver.
Huh.
Living in Denver is
It's
expensive.
tough. Yeah, I bet.
Yeah.
Yep.
So my best friend, he's a Texan,
Okay.
born and raised in Houston, got me a job with Google. Actually, he was working for Google at the time.
Really? Yeah.
So I went to go and recruit for Google.
Huh.
Technically, I was contracted to recruit for Google, but I got to take advantage of all the perks.
That's
And
cool.
that was down in Austin. So we transitioned down to Austin.
Okay.
But I think near 9 years ago now, my
Yeah.
brother-in-law had come back here
Okay.
to plant the church, the Well, in
Yeah.
town.
Yeah.
And
Very
so
cool.
we were driving up here. And then when COVID hit,
Mhm.
I had transitioned to work for Yeti Coolers for a while.
Okay.
And
Man,
then,
you've got an interesting past.
right.
Yeah.
And so after that, we just, COVID hit, we were driving up here, spending time with family all the time.
Yeah.
But I never thought we were going to move. I liked it enough. The first time I came, no, wasn't for me.
Okay.
First couple of times, I was like,
But the first time you lived in Abilene was recently.
3 years ago.
Okay. So you didn't go to college here and then move back or anything
Nope.
like that. Okay. All right.
But
Interesting.
there's something about the speed of life here. And also just the feel. I
Yeah.
love even the fact, like right now,
Yeah.
I'm hanging out in your home.
Yeah. 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 It's
Right.
pretty chill.
So everybody is always in the big towns that I've lived in, big town cities,
Yeah.
Denver, Austin.
Yeah.
Everyone's like, let's go and meet at this brewery or
Yeah.
let's go.
Oh,
here."
yeah. It's
I have
pretty
no
chill.
problem doing that,
Yeah.
but it doesn't feel as intimate,
Yeah. Yeah. Definitely.
as special.
Yeah.
And so I loved coming up here. We'd meet people and they'd say, come over.
Yeah. That's cool.
And we're just here for the weekend or whatever. And they're
Yeah.
like, come on over.
that's
Let's
cool.
hang out.
That's really cool. When I go to the big city, my wife's family is from DFW. And it seems like everything is so far away, not distance wise, but time wise, it's so far away. And so we're in the small town, 120,000 people. And what's great is like everything is just right here. We had my wife's cousin came in town. She lives in DFW and she was asking about, so her son was here playing baseball and she's like, do we need to wake up early for traffic in Abilene? And we're like, no, there's literally no traffic. It's so awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. Well, cool. And so you grew up where'd you grow up?
South Africa.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
So born and
Interesting.
raised in South Africa. My
Okay.
mother's Welsh. My dad's third generation South African.
Interesting. All right.
The accent only comes out when I want it to. So,
Oh, nice.
I used to talk to girls in college quite a bit like this, but most
Interesting.
of the time it's not. Yeah. So, it turns out your accent forms when you're 14. I moved here when I was 13 and a half.
Really?
And in middle school, everyone's asking you to speak because your voice
Interesting.
sounds different.
Interesting.
You don't want to stick out like a sore thumb. And so
Okay.
I was like, oh, I'm going to talk exactly like you.
Just switch it over.
Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah. And you grew up overseas,
Mhm.
overseas for us, not for you. And so have you gone back have you gone to Europe at all or anything like this?
Yeah. So for a long time, I had a goal to go to keep the countries that I'd been at my age. And that
Okay.
lasted until I was like 31.
Okay.
So I've been to 31 countries so far.
Okay. Very
I
cool.
lived in Norway for 2.5 years. And I've been over most countries in Europe and some countries in Asia.
Okay.
Yet to go to South America, no
Okay.
Australia yet.
Okay.
So
Interesting.
Yeah.
So I've spent a month in Ireland
Cool.
over 3 trips, and my accent is like malleable. It's bad. Like it's bad because they speak it to me, and I just it starts to go.
and what
So-
can they tell?
Well, I mean, I think they can, but then I go to get home and I'm like, okay, you're a grown up. You can't talk like, you're just like a Texan. You can't talk like that. That's weird.
Right.
So I got to like switch it back over. So anyway, it's
Nah.
interesting.
My mother-in-law's the same way. You know, my mom has an accent, and whenever they hang
Yeah.
out, she starts talking like my mom. So it's
Wow.
fun to watch.
Interesting. That's
Yeah.
funny. My daughter's been watching Bluey.
Yeah.
And so she's like, I feel like I'm starting to talk. So I don't know. It's just funny. You know, I've never listened to a Bluey episode. I've just seen it.
Okay.
So I guess it's Australian. right?
Australian.
Yeah. Yeah. So
The
anyway.
dad in that is amazing.
Yeah, that's what everybody says.
a good
That's
show.
funny. So you've got 3 kids.
I do. I've got a 6, 4, and a 2-year-old.
Oh man, you're in the heat of the battle. Yeah,
It
you
is
are.
intense.
Yes. And you've got one more.
We have one more on the way.
What-
a little
what-
daughter,
What month?
September.
All right. Man, you're right. I caught you at the right time.
Yeah.
Holy cow. You're
Yeah.
right here. So I have 4 kids.
Okay.
And we're 16, 14, and 10. And twins in the middle, boy, girl. And I love that you're having 4 kids. And I wish more people had 4 kids because I feel like there's this threshold that you go over from 3 kids to 4 kids where your threshold to care about things is just lower. You're just like, you're just like, I don't know what's going on with their eating habits. You're just like, I don't know. They're going to have to eat something or I guess they're going to die.
Yeah.
So you're just like, whatever. Yeah.
Yeah.
But I like that. I enjoy that. I've got a few friends with 4 kids and I think it's cool. So
Oh man, how hands-on you are with that first kid, and then by the 3rd kid, you're like, oh, yeah, I'm sure they're alive somewhere.
the 4th kid, she's 10.5 and she plays with the neighbors and we're like, wait, where is she right now? This would never happen with the first kid ever. We're like, where are you right now? You know, like every minute we track him down. So, well, that's cool. You got a really interesting way of arriving in Abilene. So it's not the typical, like I went to college here, I moved off and I came back to college.
Circuitous for sure.
Okay. Very interesting.
Yeah.
Okay. So tell me what's your profession? What do you do? What do you do for money?
I am a product manager,
Okay.
which basically means I run a software team that develops software.
Okay.
I work for a data company. They have the world's largest database on video games outside of mobile games.
Okay.
And so we record and keep track of hundreds, thousands of data points on every video game that's released.
Wow.
And then we market those to a whole bunch of companies, but some of the big boys out there whose name I cannot mention.
Okay. All right. But we
yeah.
could guess.
Yeah, you can guess.
We could guess.
Yeah, so we do that, and I am building what's called a B2C product for them, so business to consumer.
Oh, okay.
It's the first product. Everything we've sold so far is to other companies, business to business.
Okay.
I'm creating a product for them that's supposed to thrive with gamers.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Okay, so why would a gamer want to, like, to individuals? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
So why would they want to know?
Right.
What would they want to know about that?
That's a great question.
Okay.
We don't anticipate you using our data straight to the gamer.
Okay.
What we plan on doing is kind of allowing the gamers' influence and their thoughts, whatever they do and how they behave to influence how we use the data.
Oh, okay.
And so, one of those big boys has bought our data before, and then they come back to us and they say, like, we didn't know how to use it. It's amazing data.
Oh, yeah.
But we have no idea what we should do with this.
Oh, okay.
And so we want to say, well, this is ways you could do it. And we have a lot of ways you can use it.
Okay. Interesting.
That businesses can use it.
Yeah.
But yeah, mostly what I want to do is create I want to create software that connects people,
Okay.
specifically just catalyzes things in their lives that
Okay.
they already want, like catalyzes the healthy, catalyzes the good.
Wow. Yeah.
And so, Maslow's hierarchy of needs says that belonging is the third, it's the third on the list. You
Yeah.
got food and shelter,
Yeah.
and then belonging. You need to feel like you're a part of a community.
Yeah.
So I want to catalyze events that create community for people.
Very interesting.
Yeah.
Very cool. All right. So here's what I want to talk about. I wrote a book and I talked about media and how much media.
You just dropped. I wrote a book.
I wrote this book. Yes.
Cool.
And sometimes people are like, how long, when did you start? How long did it take you? And I'm like, I don't know. I don't want to talk about that,
Okay.
part of it. It took me
Okay.
so long and I was so tired by the end of it. But so I wrote this book, but a big part of it is like the media, like your media diet.
Yeah.
And so what I want to talk about is like how, when you're a kid,
Mhm.
I don't know what the media was like. Like, what are shows that you watch? Did you watch shows in South Africa?
Yeah.
Yeah. So what was that like growing up?
Man, I just got asked this question earlier this week. It was so surprising because, most
From
of,
someone else, not me. Interesting.
right. Surprisingly, most of my company, they operate out of India. And so I spent a lot of time talking to Indians. And,
Interesting. And then you start talking like them.
I can do that.
Yes.
But I choose not to.
Yes. That's funny.
But I, growing up in South Africa, we had 3 TV channels.
Okay.
We had a 5th channel you could pay for a subscription.
Oh.
That was like, people used to talk maybe back in the generation, because honestly, the other thing we had is we were under an embargo. So South Africa was like blocked from receiving a lot of Western media and things like that. So we would get it indirectly.
Yeah.
But due to apartheid, there was just like this kind of closed off. I grew up in the 90s watching shows like Murder, She Wrote and MacGyver,
Yeah.
and like loving MacGyver.
Yeah.
But you talk to people now and they're like, that's an 80s show or earlier,
Interesting. Yeah.
and maybe I'm getting my dates wrong, but that's what I grew up with.
Yeah. Yeah.
And we had some kids television and some things that was, that were like, I did have Power Rangers and things like that.
Yeah.
But nowhere near the same level of media that people who grew up in the late 80s, early 90s here in the US would have experienced.
Yeah. Interesting. I don't think I've ever seen an episode of Murder, She Wrote. Never once.
Angela Lansbury,
I know.
you're missing out.
I know the premise, but I just don't. Yeah. I've never seen it before.
I think Murder, She Wrote was Monday nights. MacGyver was Sunday nights. Airwolf, which no one in the...
Oh, I loved Airwolf.
Really?
Yes, but in the 80s.
Okay.
Man, you were like, life was paused for a decade for you.
Almost, yeah.
Wow, interesting.
So maybe not. I mean, it was the late 80s, so maybe we're getting it, and I'm getting my times mixed up a bit. But 3 channels too. So people ask like, "Oh, you like cricket? That's such a boring and sport."
Yeah.
I was like, "Well, it's on television for 5 days, and you have 3 channels.
Yeah.
What are you going to watch?
What else are you going to watch?
Keep flipping and looking for kids shows, but
That's right.
otherwise you're watching cricket."
That's right. That's funny. So, man, that's interesting.
Yeah.
So did MacGyver or Murder, She Wrote ever freak you out? Where there were like scary moments?
You know what's the scariest moment for me was honestly Days of Our Lives.
What's scary about Days of Our Lives?
Exactly, right?
Yeah.
There was this like lady in Days of Our Lives in the early 90s. She got possessed by the devil, which is super weird. And I remember like, honestly, and I'm not kidding, like that gave me insomnia for a while.
Really?
Couldn't sleep for like almost 2 years.
What?
Yeah.
Like, how old were you?
10.
Wow.
Yeah.
Interesting.
It wrecked me.
Wow. I mean,
I
that sounds funny, but that's real. That really...
Yeah,
Holy cow, wow.
I would not be able to sleep unless I was sleeping on the foot of my parents' bed for about 2 years of my life.
Interesting.
Yeah.
That's wild.
Anyway, we can go into that. But
Yeah.
so Days of Our Lives, scary show.
Wow. And so something that we talked about because I was a professor forever. And so one of the things we talked about was like how fake stuff affects real life.
Yeah.
It's like they totally made up that dumb storyline that like really shaped things.
Oh yeah.
Definitely. So, okay. So what's your media life like now? What is that like? Cause you're kind of like, you're part of the media, right? You're part of that industry because
Right.
video games is big media kinds of thing. So, but are Are you on socials? What does that look like for you?
I went into socials for a while. I mean, I think I went to University of Colorado Boulder.
Okay.
It was one of the first 20 schools into Facebook.
Okay.
And I remember, signing up, getting really into that.
Yeah. You had to have the .edu sign in. That's exactly right. Yeah, I remember that. Yeah.
And dropping into, I never dropped into Twitter, but trying some of those social media outlets. And then I just realized how much of a time suck they were.
They really are. Yep.
And some massively engaging content. Clearly.
Yes.
And things that even now, like if I go and I could probably spend hours scrolling Reddit if I wanted to.
Yes.
But I can't.
Yes.
Like,
yep.
You have kids and then you also have a job. And so if I do open those doorways in a sense, it's like, where did my workday go?
Yep. Absolutely.
So I don't participate in social media.
Okay. Interesting. Wow.
Yeah. I think the only thing that I occasionally hit up is, like a Twitter for news or for a Reddit if I'm like bored and I have extra time, maybe.
Yeah.
I guess YouTube is becoming some sort of social media too, but I would say it's more of a consumption platform than a social network.
Yeah. Where people aren't like engaging user to user very much. Yeah.
Right.
My students, they would regularly spend, I was amazed when TikTok came out and I would poll them, just like raise your hand if,
Yeah.
Who's on TikTok? Everybody.
Yeah.
Who spends 30 minutes on TikTok? Everybody.
Oh yeah.
And then we got up to like regularly most of the class, 2 hours a day. And I was like, 2 hours a day. Oh my gosh. You could like read all these books or you could learn languages or you could invest in the stock market, anything. You'd learn anything in 2 hours a day. And they're just like, they're in it, they're staying up too late. And that's good. That's good that you're not that much into it. Do you play video games?
I'm not a massive video gamer.
Yeah.
I see, Zelda Breath of the Wild over there.
Yeah.
I'm a huge fan of the Zelda games.
Oh, really? Yeah.
They blow my mind, but specifically because of the product management thing. Like,
oh, really? Yeah.
The idea of developing that piece of software and making it as fine-tuned as it really is.
Yeah.
Like as a piece of art that also engages users, it is like better than ever.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah.
It is an example of something that I go, man, these men and women spent just hours pouring into making every last interaction with this feel good.
Yeah.
So
I always thought when you look at dollar per minute, that a video game is like the best value because you can replay it for thousands of hours. Just one game, for $50, you can do it forever.
It's an amazing value.
Yeah, it's really cool. This is super nerdy, but I wrote my doctoral dissertation on video games.
Okay.
Yeah.
What did you explore?
And free speech, video games and free speech. Like what was happening politically. So like video games and politics and it was during the days of Mortal Kombat and there were a few other games, but they would have a big like printed off poster of what is it called? The fatalities. Are you familiar with this? Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. And so just how the laws were crafted for arcade games, they were trying to impose arcade game legal status on home games. So it's just interesting. So I just looked at that for forever. A doctoral dissertation just goes on and on and on.
You could have made a career out of that. I have a buddy, his name's Andy, and he has a website called Taming Gaming.
Okay.
It's a really cool little website, or big website inside, and it explores gaming for kids and like aims the content at like it's very easy to look at ratings and think to myself like, oh, it's rated,
E for everyone or whatever. Yeah.
Right.
Okay.
And so then kids must be able to play it.
Yeah. And
really kids accessing and understanding what they're playing and also being able to engage with content. There's no content rating on any of those games that actually tell you like, hey, my 6-year-old will enjoy this. And so he's made an entire career out of basically recommending games to other people that
really
here's a great one for your 5-year-old. And if you want, them to practice some sort of reading content, there's a little bit of reading content or there's this or that or this or that.
Oh, that's cool.
It's really cool.
Sort of like, are you familiar with Common Sense Media? So it's that reviews, we look at it for movies, if there's any nudity or anything like that. And just to see a quick breakdown. My kids are playing this I don't know what it's called, but it's some trash collection game right now. Like
Okay.
my teenagers and all of them are playing this game. And I'm like, what even is this? And there's like these cans and they're collecting the cans. I don't know what's going on. So
Not familiar.
it's very interesting. So
Do you game?
I play some Call of Duty.
Okay.
The thing I like about that is I can jump in and play 2 or 3 rounds really quick. I'm
Yeah.
not good at it and I just like lose, but I just 2 or 3, like 20 or 30 minutes,
Yeah.
get in, get out. And I'm pretty good.
See, I used to do that, but I'm too competitive. So every time I left after 30 minutes of losing, I would
Yeah.
feel worse.
Yeah.
So then I found like, Zelda, you can jump in, do like a quick shrine, solve a puzzle, then walk away. And I'm like, oh, look, I did something rather than I lost.
I lost. Yeah. I feel like media right now is, you can probably speak to this big time, but the multiplayer. So the campaign used to be enough
Yeah.
where you get on the campaign. You're like, oh, this is great. This is the best game ever.
Right.
One of my favorite, I'm about to get super nerdy, but one of my very favorite games ever was a game called Splinter Cell.
Yeah.
Where it's like a sneaker shooter, but you could go through the first one, you could go through the whole game and not kill anyone except for the last guy.
I love that.
And I just thought that was the coolest thing ever, if you figured out how to do it. And that was enough.
Yeah.
And now it's so interactive
Uh-huh.
that the campaign is hard for me. It just feels boring. It feels chill compared to, so I don't know if I could do Zelda because it's not like people aren't shooting at me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I want to go on this massive like rant about that in a sense. I think it's the joy of that shared experience.
Yeah.
So you guys, and before my time, but
Yeah.
Johnny Carson.
Yeah. I mean, yeah.
So Johnny Carson was on the Tonight Show.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think, maybe since then we've had some others that have represented this too, but during his era, you were either watching, and this is not my information, I forget who spoke about this in a book he wrote, but, you were either watching Johnny Carson or you were deliberately not watching Johnny Carson during that era.
Yeah.
And so like you were united over either not or you were.
Yes.
Nowadays, the choice is so massive that connecting over things is something that is not happening.
It's
nearly
really
as
not.
much.
Yeah.
So I'll be like,
you're right.
hey, are you a fan of Westworld?
Yeah.
And people will be like, I've never watched the show.
Yeah.
Or do you like Lost? Do you like this? There's some shows that have really brought generations together.
Yeah.
But I would say in general, it's not like 7 out of 10 anymore.
No,
You know?
it's not at all.
Like if I speak to someone who grew up in the 80s and I say MacGyver, like we talked about earlier,
Boom.
everybody
You're on
knows
it. Yeah,
MacGyver.
that's exactly right.
And how many kids born after the 80s have a show that's just exactly like that?
Yeah.
And maybe there are, for sure.
Yeah.
But I think to myself, we used to feel more connected, which is
Yeah.
one of the reasons I want to, through technology, catalyze that feeling of connectedness.
Yeah. Yeah, that's true. What's the last show? What do you think is the last show?
There was that thing.
Yeah, was that thing. You mentioned Lost. Was it Lost? I don't know. Was it 24? Was it like that era?
Yeah, man. I honestly think maybe like you speak to Game of Thrones and it's either this like I watched it or I didn't.
Yeah, I didn't watch it.
And that's fine, right?
Yeah. Did you watch it?
I did.
Okay.
Unfortunately.
Unfortunately.
Well, I think like, especially with the 8th season, just absolutely wrecking the whole show, but also.
Was that the last? Was it over after 8 or no?
Yeah.
I just don't know anything
And
about
8
it.
destroyed it.
Okay.
The writers are like
Oh.
infamously, I think still, if you like Google search bad writers,
Yeah.
they're the first images that come up.
Oh, yeah.
So, but I think that was maybe that caught the eye of a generation.
Right.
What are yours? Like, are there any shows you think of?
I mean, the most recent one maybe was I just rewatched Breaking Bad.
Oh yeah.
And did you watch Breaking Bad?
I watched the first season and then I was like, this is getting like, it's too dark for me.
It got darker. Yeah, it got darker.
Yeah.
But and I only just because of kids. I'll blame my kids in this situation, but just got busy. So I got through, there are 5 seasons. I got through like 4 seasons and then I just kind of stopped. So I went back through, I watched all of it and then actually finished it out. And the 5th season it's so good. There's so many moments where you're just like, it's because it builds the tension all the way. Cause something's going to happen.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
So then, they build that tension really well. But like Lost or Breaking Bad, but I don't know, maybe Game of Thrones was like the last one, but you're right. And I've talked about it on this podcast before where I'll follow somebody who has 5 million followers.
Yeah.
And I will bring him up to you, assuming that you know who in the heck I'm talking about. And you're like, I don't know who that is. Yeah.
Right.
So with my students, they would mention something to me, and I have no place on the map for what they're saying. I had a guy. It's really fascinating to me. I had a guy who came in. They had to present over a influencer and like talk about what they did and their content and everything else, because I taught media. And he came in and he talked about a drifter, like cars. His whole deal was cars and just drifting, which just sounds like sliding around corners. Right. I know there's a whole thing to it, which is cool, but I just don't know anything about it. And so he made his whole career about drifting. He bought a 40-acre compound in Florida, just drifting. Right. So it was really fascinating. But to your point about like, we're all just fragmented. There's no common experience. There's nothing like that. So
yeah, I mean, you and I saw each other earlier today in a coffee shop, right?
Yeah.
And I brought up Russell Brand.
Yep.
Who I think is 7 million, maybe 7 or 8 million now subscribers on YouTube.
Yeah.
And almost everybody I think a lot of people I mentioned Russell Brand to know who that is.
Right.
Two people sitting at the table didn't know.
They didn't know. I was like, how do you not know who Russell Brand is? And I played, so I spend not too much time on social media, but one of the ways I rationalize or justify how I do this is I'll do like bedtime routine or whatever with my 10-year-old, and we'll just like watch funny videos or whatever. And so I'll just like scroll through. I'm a sucker for watching people fall down. I just want to see like something funny happen. And so we'll watch a video and I'll stop it and I'll say, or like, I'll scroll away from it. And I'm like, what's going to happen? So we try to guess what's going to happen. Anyway, so sometimes Russell Brand will pop up, and even my 10-year-old knew who Russell Brand was. Cause she's like, oh, that's so-and-so from Zootopia or whatever he was in. So it's funny. She even knew who he was. So
man, one, I've got to say, I love fail videos. Like just watching people fall is way funnier than
I can't stop. I can't stop. Can't stop.
I think the other thing that's like uniting generation 2 is probably, GIFs, GIFs and memes. Like memes mean something to us.
They really do. Yeah.
Which is really fascinating. You think about like, at my gym, we have this funny open week where we all dress up and there's a theme.
Okay. Yeah.
And one of them was, favorite meme.
Oh, that's awesome.
And people walk in and that's something you can recognize.
You're like, oh yeah, I know that meme.
I think that's one of those things too, where it's like, this is a community.
Yeah.
And when there's a community around even understanding a meme, you feel more connected to your fellow human being.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's something that I think we all long for a bit more.
Yeah.
Maybe not every time. You don't want everybody to watch the exact same things because you want people to bring their own diversity to the situation. Yeah. Yeah. But it would have been nice if those guys knew who Russell Brand was.
I know, it's kind of weird. What's the best gift? But by the way, I was in my classes and interpersonally just talking to people. I'm very passionate about pronouncing it GIF. When people say GIF, I'm like, it's not a GIF. The G is like it's a G sound. It's not a J sound. I know it's graphical. Yes, graphical. What's the best one? Or what are your ones? What are the ones that you use? I'll tell you mine. It's the lady doing algebra, where she's like looking off. And I do that all the time. It applies to almost every situation. Yeah. Yes. Or the little puppet guy who looks sideways. He's like a little monkey puppet. Yeah.
I love, man, I keep defaulting to The Office, and maybe that's another one of those shows that like united everybody. Yeah, you either watched it or you didn't. Yeah. But the one where like Michael's going, and like really grimacing as if there's something that's like, this is awful. Oh no. Or when he yells no about Toby coming back, it's like, no. Yes. I use those.
So great. Yeah. Oh gosh, what year was that? Probably 4 or 5 years ago.
Right.
Maybe 5 to 7 years ago. But I asked my classes, like, what's the funniest video or GIF or whatever? And we could talk about it. And now, who knows? There's this one, and it's a voicemail, and it's this guy broke up with a girl, and the girl's calling to leave a message, and she's crying, and it sounds like a race car kind of. And so it has
This sounds
the car. It's a car video. The video is a car, like a race car driving by. And
Okay.
but the audio is of her as a voicemail, and she's crying and she's doing this weird cry. And
When we
I
get
just
done
think it's the
doing this,
best.
can you show
I'm
that?
going to pull it up. Yeah, I'll totally pull it
Because
up.
I haven't seen it, but now I
And,
want to.
Yeah.
But you
Yeah.
know, the word meme actually came like, I remember a biologist talking to it means passed on. It comes from, if I might be wrong.
It's like
right?
a real word. I don't know. I don't
Yeah.
know anything about
So
this. Yeah.
gene,
Okay.
right? And then scientists start talking about
Oh yeah.
the mental hereditary, what's the right word here? Items
Okay.
that like one generation will pass on to another in order
Okay.
to further survival.
Okay.
And so like, you know, you hear of monkeys, for example, like being able to break open bones and suck out the marrow, allowed
Yeah.
them to survive. Well, that's not a genetic thing that they developed, but it is
Interesting.
something that they pass on because they have this united, like in their society, a united piece of knowledge.
Wow.
And so for me, I'm thinking like, what are the memes of our generation? And what are the memes that our parents handed to us?
Yeah, that's true.
And there's some things that are really important, obviously bigger than we can discuss here.
Yeah.
But even now, like what do we quickly pass on
yeah.
to others? And what will they
Interesting.
look back at as their MacGyvers?
Yeah. That's true. Yeah, absolutely.
Like what do your daughter think is MacGyver?
Yeah.
Fail videos?
Maybe so. I don't know. That's a great question. What we watch in my house is plotless. We watch cooking shows
Oh yeah.
because
There is a plot to a cooking show.
there's a plot to a cook show. So, but there's not like
No, I understand.
episode, it's just a little episode. So, but because there's no bad words.
Yeah.
Guy Fieri, there's no bad words, or Alton Brown, or Beat Bobby Flay,
So
or something like that.
You're not watching
Hell's Kitchen, or
No. Okay.
no, we're not watching that. No, there's no bad words, and I don't want to sit down for. So like sometimes we're eating, and then we watch something. Maybe
Yeah.
that's bad, but we do it sometimes. And so we sit down, and I don't want to watch like an hour and a half long thing. I just want to watch, like, if we do 20 minutes, that's fine. If we do 40 minutes, that's fine. Like,
Yeah.
jump in and jump out. So, but yeah, that's a good question. I don't know, but it is interesting to think about like what makes sense to us, what catches hold in that
Yeah.
rationality. Very
It's also
interesting.
food television seems like one of those things that you can watch with a child. The child can, absorb and appreciate. Our kids love like Great British Baking Show
Yeah.
for sure.
Yeah.
But
That's cool.
it also like, I wonder, are we just raising generations of bakers and foodies?
Maybe so.
That'd be great.
All my kids cook. So it's fun.
Yeah.
I love it. It's like a skill. So
That is it's good to know, because my wife was just saying last night, heading into 4, like, how am I going to be able to bake and teach the oldest one to bake and do these types of things?
yeah. Oh yeah.
It's like, no, they'll get it.
Yeah.
We'll
Your
jump
oldest
in.
is, what'd you say?
6.
10? Okay, 6. Yeah. So you're not quite. I remember when we started leaving ours, it was like, it was like a big deal. We just we don't have a babysitter anymore.
I know.
That's probably hard for you to fathom.
You told
But,
me about this.
yeah.
And it sounded like a game changer. And then
Yeah.
I just started longing for older, like in the future.
And so there's no babysitter, and we'll have pizzas, and they cook pizzas on their own, and they don't want us here when they cook the pizza for some reason. They're like, we like to watch our shows with the pizza, and it just ruins a whole vibe if there's a parent here. So we're like, okay, so we just like take off. So they're here in the room, and they're doing all their things and everything.
I don't
and
want you here. I want to eat my pizza
I know.
in peace.
I know, it's awesome.
My piece. It's
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
that was a horrible
So,
pun.
yeah. But you're right. So on my last, or a couple of podcasts ago, I was talking about like a corpus, or like a body of shows.
Yeah.
There's no body of shows. Like in the 60s and 70s, these are the shows. And now
Right.
there's just so many shows, and the shows are good. It's like every show is such a good production. They're like movies, every single
Right.
one. And I feel like Lost. Did you watch Lost?
I did.
We loved Lost. Even when it got dumb. Like
Even when it was dumb, it was fun.
dumb. We still look forward to it. And to me, it was like, for us, it might have been the last one where it was.
But
Yeah.
see, that to me is like one of the sadnesses, right? And I'm not saying like this can't be replicated, but I think to myself, like, I used to discuss Lost with the people, right? We used to like,
Analyze it. Yeah.
yeah, like what is the mystery in this? And I
What's-
think it was like Abrams, right?
Yeah.
he specifically loved mystery. And so
Yeah.
when he was like a little kid, he was
Yeah.
taken to a toy store and he bought this mystery box
Okay.
and he put it on his desk and never opened it because he loved the idea of mystery. Just sitting there with like, I never want to know what's inside of this. And so like, I think of, the end of that show, even the revealing of what it might have been. And I
Yeah.
don't want to spoil it for
Yeah,
anyone
yeah.
who might want to go
If
back.
they haven't seen it by now, do you think they would? I don't know.
But that's the thing where I'm like, man, there was something beautiful that formed a community around that.
Yeah,
and now
definitely.
like my favorite show that did the exact same thing, like what is going on, was
Yeah.
Dark.
Oh,
It's a German television
Okay.
show. And
subtitles, I guess.
I watch it with subtitles.
Okay. Yeah.
But you can watch it with dub. It just looks weird, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't mind subtitles. Some people super hate it.
Yeah. But then it's worth watching either way.
Okay.
Like it's 3 seasons, closes the loophole in the end in
Nice.
an amazing way,
Okay.
but blows your freaking mind.
Okay.
And I just want to share that experience.
Yeah.
And maybe that's because I'm like an Enneagram 4. And,
Okay.
like we love these things. And then we have this huge passion about sharing. That's
Okay.
what probably made me a good teacher too.
Okay,
It's like,
yeah.
I want to share this thing I've discovered.
Yeah.
But to me, I think to myself, like every time I talk to anyone,
Yeah.
they've never watched it.
Yeah.
There's like
That's
one
interesting.
person and I used to call him up and we used to sit on the website and
That's funny. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. That's really funny. Okay. I'm going to have, so one of my good friends she's a therapist and
Yeah.
she's really into, she and I are really into the Enneagram.
okay.
And so I think we're going to have a whole Enneagram episode
Oh,
on
man.
why it's better than ever. So we can talk about Enneagram too, but it's better than ever because you can actually know like all the things that you can know about yourself and about other people that you couldn't know, even I would even say like 10 years ago, that wasn't on the map at all. So
Yeah, you should have me back on the show so we can talk about that at some point
Okay.
because I do not like the Enneagram.
Okay. You
and I have
don't,
some strong opinions against
Okay.
it.
it's because you're a 4, dude.
Yeah, I've
Yeah.
got to be unique.
I
You
know.
know, if you lump me into the same category as everybody
I know,
else,
I know. My sister's a 4.
no,
My sister's not a 4.
Right,
How about that
right.
quote, air quotes? She's totally not a 4. You can't put me in a box. I'm unique and special.
But the other thing the Enneagram was interesting about is like a lot of it was aimed originally at like kind of pointing out your flaws.
Oh yeah.
Like this is
I get
how
that.
this is how you, and this is when you're not healthy.
Yeah.
And when you're healthy, you act in this way.
Yeah.
And so like to me, maybe I'm just really good at knowing my own flaws,
Yeah.
but I love the strength finders
Yeah.
because
yeah.
I was like, oh, this is telling me what I'm good at. And
Moving,
actually a
yeah.
bunch of things that I thought were flaws came
Yeah.
out as strengths from the
That's
strength
cool.
finder.
That's cool.
Like ideation, my mind jumps from this to this to this to this. My wife says like, how did you just say, where did you get that? and I
That's
can
funny.
explain exactly
Yeah.
the
how you
mental
got there.
path
Yeah.
of how but it's always weird.
Well, even in the name StrengthsFinder is
Right.
it says it right there.
Yeah.
That's cool. That's really cool.
So, but you love the Enneagram and you haven't said what number you are yet.
I like the Enneagram quite a bit. I'm a 1.
You are.
Yeah, I'm a 1. I'm
Okay.
big time a 1. Yeah.
But the one, like the only one, well, the one that united with the oneness that I've
Mhm.
seen, like it broke him to realize he was such a perfectionist. And
Oh, really? So the thing that helped me the most was there are 2 different kinds of ones. There's the perfectionist and there's the reformer.
okay,
So I'm not a perfectionist. My truck is messy. It's just really messy because I love the next project because I'm like, I'm going to make everything better. It's going to be awesome.
yeah.
And so, I mean, even this, which I haven't really thought about till right now, but I'm like better than ever. Like I'm going to make things better. I'm
Yeah.
going to we're going to be thankful for things and things like that. And so yeah, I like that. It helped my marriage a lot because I was able to look at my wife and be like, oh, she sees this. I would never see that.
Yeah.
Like never, ever see that. And one of my buddies, he's a Enneagram 7. He preached a sermon and I remember thinking like, I would never see things like that. Like he
Wow.
talked all about shame. And I was like, I don't struggle with shame. I don't understand shame. I understand guilt, but I don't understand shame.
Huh.
And so it was really interesting. So I think that's better than ever. Even if you don't like the Enneagram, which is fine.
You just
But-
converted me. Oh man, I realized how much I understand about my wife because of it, and I was like,
Yeah.
you know what? Maybe I shouldn't be so hard on it.
That's funny. What is she?
She's a inverted 9.
Invert. What does that mean?
I don't know,
Oh.
but she tells me. But
Okay.
she tells me like the way that she thinks, and I'm like, yeah, that is. And so because of that, I think it's provided her enough clarity
Yeah.
to point at things that
Okay.
it's
Yeah,
cool.
Interesting. Yeah. Very cool. My wife's a 9 as well.
Ah,
Yeah. Yeah.
And I like people could not tell whether I was a 4 or 1 or Some
Oh, yeah.
people say that I'm something
Interesting.
else. So
Yeah.
that's one of the, maybe I just like that because
Yeah.
that makes me unique again.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
But even if you use StrengthsFinder, or are you, my brother-in-law talked about this in one of the podcasts, but he talked about the Working Genius. I don't know if
Okay.
you're familiar with Pat Lencioni.
No.
He's a leadership guy, and it's not necessarily interpersonal relationships, but it's mainly about work.
Yeah.
And so, are you good at the beginnings of projects, the middles of projects, or the ends of projects? And it's helped me so much because he talked about how you feel like sometimes you feel lazy if you're around somebody, because I'm really good at the beginnings of projects,
Right.
and I'm horrible. The ends of projects just kill me. Like my energy's sapped and I just feel like I want to lay down. And I've got a couple of real estate projects right now, and I'm just like, I'm so tired. I can't think about this anymore. And so it's really good. I mean,
Yeah.
it's really interesting.
This
Anyway,
is worse than writing a book.
I know, that's right. The end stages of writing a book was just
Like you said, you
just the
ended in
worst.
feeling exhausted.
I just was totally exhausted. It was not fun. Yeah. So, okay. So what's better than ever?
Gosh, I have so many answers to this question. And ever since you posed it to me, I was like, that's a great focus. And I'm willing to dive into any of these,
Yeah.
probably because I'll ideate all over them.
Okay.
But yeah, economics,
Okay.
global poverty,
What about economics is better than ever?
our understanding of what motivates people, but mostly just the fact that we have, at least a lot of countries out there,
Mhm.
have united around the idea of, the comparative advantage.
Okay.
And that if they produce what they're good at producing and trade it with other people, they actually end up better. So people are always talking about, like buy local and things like that.
Yeah.
And I think like there is some validity to that.
Yeah.
But the fact that we've been able to say buy global, and, France is good at making wines. So obviously it's different, but it's raised every country up. I mean,
Yeah.
if you look at the 1980s, I think 40% of the world before the 1980s,
Mhm.
adjusted for inflation, earned less than $2 a day.
Wow. Yeah.
And now, even in 2015, it was, less than 10%.
Wow. That's
So
really
like
cool.
the global poverty rate,
Yeah.
global health,
Yeah.
80% of the world has some access to electricity.
Yeah. That's huge.
Massive.
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And so there's these things like that I think, man, as a whole, the world is a far better place.
Absolutely.
Far fewer people are dying.
Yeah.
In countries that are considered second world, you would have tons of, like, at least one medical professional
Yeah.
is present at almost 100% of births,
Wow.
which, infant mortality was massive.
Yeah.
And so you get all these things where, you're changing infant mortality in Africa in the worst times, like 1 in 17. And now it's getting up above like 1 in 200, 1 in 300.
Wow.
Just life expectancy keeps increasing.
That's really cool.
And that's through when some countries get rich, they want to buy things, and a rising tide floats all boats.
Yeah,
And
that's
so,
right. Yeah. But even that right now is controversial, right?
yes,
Yeah.
it's somehow based off of colonialism and all these other things
right.
that you can go into for
Right.
sure.
Right.
I think that one of the things to focus on there would be, what is life getting better for those people?
Yeah.
And a lot of them say it is.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And so I think we shouldn't sit from our context and say like, in this advanced society where we get to talk about memes and watching shows.
Yeah.
And we see people who, I can have 3 children now,
Yeah.
and I can support 3 children.
Right.
And that's a beautiful thing.
Yeah. Yeah. That's really cool.
So
I read a report, or like a little article, and they talked about ice and delivering ice, like in big cities delivering ice. So they would come or down the East Coast.
yeah,
They would get ice, and there was a businessman, and there were people in the Caribbean.
right.
He was trying to get ice to them because they'd literally never seen ice. And I want to do like a podcast, like a short, just like reviewing this, because I think it's just fascinating. Like somebody who's they've just heard stories about ice. They've literally never seen ice before. And it sounds like, oh, that's novel, or electricity is novel, but it's really not.
Right.
I mean, there's so many things, like refrigeration changes everything.
Yes.
Absolutely everything. So to have electricity, to have refrigeration changes everything. Like if your electricity goes out right now
Right.
and it's out for a week, it's going to change your whole life.
Yes.
It really is. Were you here in 21? You were here in February 21
Yeah.
when all the power went out and everything.
Yeah.
So we're by the nursing home over
Okay.
here, and our power never went out. But our water went out. And so we went in the backyard and scooped up snow, which luckily there was snow,
Yeah.
but it was a bad deal. And I rethought my whole life. Yeah.
I remember that. I mean, we had
Yeah.
our electricity never went out. Our water did go out.
Yeah.
We had people coming over and
Yeah.
staying with us because
Yeah.
their electricity was out. It's a big deal.
It's a big deal. Yeah.
And it's interesting, like you talk about refrigeration and ice. I used to teach about that in economics because that was my focus for creative destruction, which is something that people, I think it's so easy to see things, the secondary consequences.
Okay.
And I think as we grow and become more educated, we can start focusing on tertiary and so on. The
Yeah.
next word is quaternary.
Whoa.
Right. But like one of the major consequences of refrigeration
Yeah.
was all those ice sellers lost their jobs.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
So people used to haul ice around,
Yeah.
right? And sell it and hawk it on the streets.
Yeah.
They don't anymore.
Yeah.
But we would all say like refrigeration was a good thing for us.
Yeah.
I feel like that might be maybe what happens with AI, where AI comes in, wrecks a lot of jobs, but we
Right.
actually go, you know what? That was good for us
That's
as a
good.
whole.
Yeah.
We got to focus on what we wanted to.
Yeah, definitely. So what did you say? Creative destruction. What does that mean? That means that because we're getting new things, we lose old things.
Yeah.
Okay.
And there's, people lose jobs. So you
Okay.
can say like, hey, the invention of refrigeration,
Mhm.
like meant the loss of jobs and that's a destructive thing. Right.
Yeah.
But new technology always kind of is a wrecking ball.
Yeah.
It comes in and we love that it's there once
Right.
it's there.
Right.
But it hurts many people.
Definitely. Yeah.
And yet we all like, even those people, I think sometimes say like, this was better for us.
Right. Yeah.
So
Where they land in a good spot.
yeah,
Yeah. So what is AI touching your world at all?
it is.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
How so?
data gathering,
Okay.
you have this idea that when we're recording all these things for video games, AI will probably be able to do similar jobs soon.
Okay.
On top of that, I would say you see AI is probably going to be used in advertising, and a lot of the money in tech is actually around ads.
Yeah.
So I can more curate an advertisement to you.
Okay.
We also see it. We know that our data will get scraped by AI soon.
Oh yeah.
So the more we put it out there on the web, which it's not currently,
Right.
but the more people have access to it, the more it's going to end up in some giant language learning model or something like that out there at some point.
So in the communication field, there was broadcasting.
Yeah.
Right. So the 2 or 3 channels or 3 or 4 channels, they just shot everything out there. There was a Super Bowl commercial or whatever. Well, then 20 or 30 years ago, 30 years ago, they started talking about narrowcasting.
Yeah.
Right. And so like specifically to you, but I don't know if we're there yet because like on Hulu and other platforms, it's like, it still feels like the narrowcasting hasn't landed yet. And it might be because there's 6 people in my house and it doesn't quite know what to do with us. I don't know.
Yeah.
But it does work in ads and web ads for sure, because, we just mentioned something and then it starts popping up on your phone or whatever. So that's true. Did you ever see the movie? So one of my favorite authors is Philip K. Dick.
Yeah.
And Minority Report it's one of my very favorites, the book and the movie. And where he's walking through and it like reads his eye and he's like, "Hello, Mr. Anderton." And, tells him all the things. He's got to change his eyeballs.
100%.
Yeah.
Yeah. That level of, like you're saying, narrowcasting, if you want to call it that, recommendation. Netflix is pouring tons and tons of money into that.
Yeah.
Because they want you to, I think at one point Netflix on its like loss and earnings sheet listed as one of its main competitors, Sleep.
Whoa.
Sleep was one of its main competitors.
And they're just trying to combat it.
Yeah. Wow. But that's like also that focus where you're like, well, this giant company, it would be good if they might be able to catalyze things that are healthy for me.
Yeah. And
I think we'll get there. I think we're pushing. There'll be a backlash amongst us as consumers.
Yeah.
To kind of, and you see that people dropping off of Facebook all the time now.
Yeah.
And, Facebook was the old social network anyway.
Yeah.
But I think even those TikTok watchers you talk to, in your classes.
Yeah.
They're going to get to some point probably.
Right.
And they're going to say, I get it, but this wasn't that good for me.
Yeah.
And I think TikTok is one of the few platforms where they've tried to break that. So if you scroll on TikTok for a while, you'll actually hit like hey, you should take a break for a little bit. But the problem is, and there's this really cool website, growth.design.
Okay.
And they talk about user interfaces, user experiences better than ever.
Yeah.
But I love how they talked about that one, because what they say specifically is that if you want to break, the concentration on TikTok, you need to present it in a way that that actually breaks like all that comes up was another video. It's oh, you should take a break.
Oh yeah.
Well, that looks exactly like the same medium you've always consumed. So instead of that, like actually break it for the person.
Interesting. Yeah.
But I think more and more we'll have that pushback and be like, look, advertising is meant to meet a need when it's done well.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's not meant to feel like advertising. And so like, I will actually feel if someone advertises really well to me, I'm going to feel like you just did me a favor.
Yeah, that's true. It's like a win-win instead of they're taking advantage of it. And I think for me, at least, when we think about the algorithm and the machine trying to get us, is that we, like in the documentary, the social dilemma, right? Yeah, the social dilemma. But I don't know what's happening. Where there's some invisible forces back there where I'm just not quite sure what's going on, and that kind of freaks me out. Yeah. Yeah. So we were at a store a couple of years ago, and we mentioned we should get a hot tub. And then guess what? The next day, boom, on Instagram, the hot tub ads start. So stuff like that, where it feels like there's this invisible thing trying to get you, or trying to sort of, where it's not a win-win.
Right. No, not at all.
Yeah.
They're trying to get you and say like, hey, we heard you say this.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Even if it's not good for you, go buy one.
Yeah, that's right. So can it be better than ever, so that we're getting past that? Like, do we have more control? Is there any way to control what's happening to us?
Oof, good question.
I don't know, because I don't know. I feel manipulated. And even I think there's some research that says that they're dealing social media posts that make you angry.
Oh yeah.
Oh,
because that's like, clickbait.
Totally. Yeah.
I forget who said it, but my pastor's brought it up a couple times, where he goes like, we love to feel right and wronged.
Oh yeah.
So like we feel like our opinion is correct, but we have been wronged by something we're seeing, or some group, or even some media group, like whatever it is. You would love to feel wronged. Wow, that sense of self-righteousness of like, but can it be better than ever? I think so.
You think so? Yeah.
Yeah. I think there are people out there who want to see technology serving us, rather than technology trying to rule us.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And I think that there are people who can get funding for that. And like, we're seeing that, for example, games companies are coming out and saying, hey, we want to do better for you, so we're going to block ads, things like that. Like, we're just going to remove those things.
Interesting. Yeah.
But it might cost a little bit more, or at first it might cost some more.
Huh. Interesting.
I think everything you want requires sacrifice, right?
Yeah.
So we've got to give up something in order to get to that good spot.
One of my favorites is Jocko. I don't know if you know Jocko Willink.
Yeah.
He's one of the ones that I'll mention and people don't know who he is. So
no, I know what you're talking about.
My wife, the Enneagram 9, he's too intense for her.
Oh yeah.
And I just love it. And I'll watch a video. She's like, oh my gosh, he's so intense. Anyway, but I love him so much. But he talked about social media, and he hopes that social media, he parallels it to smoking, where he says that I hope that we move past it, where we look back and we're like, yeah, we know that was bad for us, but now we're sort of in a better place.
Yeah.
Instead of just being, but I don't know. I don't know if we can get there. Can we disconnect from our phone? I have 4 kids. You're about to have 4 kids.
Right.
And even reading, I know everybody's different, but for me, reading takes more brain power than just doom scrolling. And if I like sit down with a book, and in 5 minutes, I'm out.
Yeah.
I'm so sleepy because it takes a little bit of brain power.
Right.
So,
and man, there's some articles that I'd love to send your way, but I think like one of the things that has been a consequence of the written word as a whole is when before the written word came along, you had to discuss things.
Yeah.
Right. every piece of news, like Joe would come and tell me a piece of news,
Yeah.
and he'd say, well, this thing happened today.
Yeah.
And I would be like, do I believe Joe?
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. There's some bias, some doubt.
Yeah.
And even not, I can discuss it with you.
Yeah.
But then what happened with media was like, well, okay, we have all this, even just the printing press. Suddenly we're reading things,
Right.
and reading comes with some level of authority because it always came from an educated area too, right?
And it looks permanent, right? Yeah, and it has a sense of place in the world. Yeah. So when we look back at Cicero, for example, they distrusted anything that was printed because it couldn't defend itself and it couldn't speak for itself. So yeah, it was that idea.
And I think that that's, one way that we don't consume with the caution anymore.
Yeah.
And it's gotten to the point where I'm going to probably like, if I'm going to read a book, I'm going to enjoy that.
Yeah.
If I read that social media, I often see that as, this is the way that things must be.
Interesting. Right? Yeah.
And so I don't really know if this specifically addresses what you were saying there. The reading is more difficult.
Yeah.
But it is, doom scrolling is easier. It's more consumable.
Yeah. Absolutely.
But it brings authority. And you were talking earlier about consuming media that, unreal things that have influence on us.
Yeah.
And I think that they have massive influence on us. So I miss the days. Like I tried to pick up, a book I read in college the other day, Brothers Dostoevsky's book, Brothers Karamazov. Yeah. And I love that book.
Yeah.
But even just pushing through the first 3 chapters now, I was like, ow.
Yeah.
This is, I could do this and now I can't, or I can't do it nearly as well or as easily.
I tried that in college too. And I didn't make it to the end, but I loved the first half of it or whatever. It was awesome. I love that book. What else? Anything else come to mind? What's better than ever?
Yeah, I think the thing that's going to connect with the most people is coffee. Coffee is better than ever.
That's awesome.
And we had this.
Tell me about coffee. I don't know. I love coffee, but I don't know that much about it.
Yeah. Let's talk about the global trade again, right?
Yeah.
I mean, coffee, to me, coffee embodies your better than ever.
Okay.
And I'll tell you why, because I've always drank coffee. Like you can go and buy the best scotches or the best wines or whatever, the best, but how much are you going to pay for like the best bottle of wine? The $10,000?
$1 million. Yeah.
So much, right?
That's right. Yeah.
But I can have a cup of coffee that's called a 90, it's above a 90 score of 90, which is like, there's a coffee scoring system. Yeah. I can have one of the best cups of coffee in the world for less than $1 a cup still.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah. That's
if I brew it myself, it got all the way from wherever it was grown.
Where was it grown?
Depends on where you like.
Okay.
But like even that, and here's people are going to, if scientists are listening to this, they're going to be like, he doesn't know what he's talking about. Yeah. But the way that I always talk about coffee is it has flavor taste particles, just like any wine, just like any.
Okay.
And some of those flavor taste particles are called like lactones. So if you're out there and then you're listening and you don't like coffee, well, I would argue I can get a coffee that you like, because if you like anything, I could find a coffee that tastes like that.
Interesting.
Because it has the same particles as like steak or, whatever it is, things you do like.
Yeah.
Now, coffee, when people talk about it, they talk about their grandma like pulling coffee out of the freezer and brewing a cup that they haven't, of this coffee they haven't touched in like 6 months.
Right.
And coffee's like any other food. You're not going to roast carrots and then let them sit in your anywhere.
Yeah. That makes
especially
sense.
not in like just your cupboard for 6 months and then pull it out and pour water on it and be like, hey, try this soup.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah.
Coffee is just bean soup or seed soup.
Yeah. That's funny.
So I look at that and I think, man, this coffee can come from all over the world.
Yeah.
It has like if you learn how to taste coffee, it's a great beverage or anything to get your feet wet on trying to taste all different aspects. The terroir is what they call it. Like the terroir of wine is like what flavor that the earth puts into the bean.
Interesting. Okay.
And so like you were saying earlier, I just really like it hot.
Yes.
And like strong.
Yes.
Right.
Hot and strong. That's how I want my coffee. That's right. Even if it's bad, I just want it like just punch you in the teeth. Yeah.
I hear you.
Yeah.
And I think that like is a generation of like coffee drinkers that definitely feel that way.
Okay.
And I never fault people for the way that they like, I love coffee and your consumption of it helps me get it cheaper.
Okay.
So I'm cool with that.
Okay.
But I think that we could find a coffee that has a full mouthfeel.
Yeah.
And I love hot coffee too,
Okay.
but coffee should taste good all the way down through the temperatures. And that taste should change aggressively,
Interesting.
not just change for the worse. Like people like cold coffee.
Yeah.
They should actually get better in some spots. I've had coffee within a certain temperature range because the particles are vibrating. The ones that are really agitating and getting on your tongue are at different temperatures. Those are the ones that are most excited. And so like I've had coffee that within a certain temperature band will taste like honeydew melon juice. And if you handed that to me and you said, try this juice, I would have been like, whoa, that's crazy. It's warm honeydew melon juice.
I need to try these coffees that you're talking about.
Let's get cupping.
I know. I want to. That's awesome.
But like I said, I think going back to the original point, I can drink that cup. And then if it's the first thing I have in the morning, I think to myself, like, if just a cup of coffee can be this good.
Yeah.
How good, like how blessed am I? How good can the rest of my day be?
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's really cool. Are you like a positive person? Do you feel like you're a positive person?
Not inwardly.
Okay.
My mental thought patterns tend to be pretty negative.
Okay.
But outwardly, people see me as positive and passionate.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Do you have any, like better than ever kinds of things? But we're going to talk about coffee more sometime later.
That.
Okay. But with thankfulness, do you have any practices that are like you do like mindfulness or thankfulness sorts of things?
Yeah.
You can say no, like it's not the wrong answer if you.
No,
you're just like, no, I don't.
No, I find myself, especially after having children, being very grateful and thankful for little moments.
Yeah.
Like I will hold my son. We were in Mexico last year, an amazing trip where we got to go to the beach.
That's cool.
One of their first times. And I picked up my son, the beach, the waves are crashing in the background.
Yeah.
Sun's glistening off the ocean and through his blonde hair. And I look down at his dark brown eyes and I just think to myself, this is a movie.
Yeah.
Like this is not real.
Yeah. That's cool.
And I just, even now thinking about it, I get shivers. I'm like, man, this is how blessed am I in this moment?
Yeah.
Like how grateful can I be? And I think those types of things, they occur pretty often when I look at my children, when I look at my wife, when, there's things that remind me on a daily basis of what's important.
Yeah.
And cool. I think I easily hold on to a lot of other things being my identity.
Yeah.
But in those moments, the gratitude of this was given to me and is a gift.
Yeah.
I just roots you, Yeah.
That's really cool.
What about you?
We are in my fancy studio here, but I literally wake up every day and we have a cat. They have a cat. He's not my cat.
Oh, yeah.
He is a cat who lives in my house.
Thank you for clarifying.
But yes, that's right. I don't want you to get the wrong idea about me here because I don't really actually like cats, but he's the best cat ever. Like he's so friendly. He's just like purring. He just wants to purr and like be with you. Anyway, he spends the night outside every night because I want him to go and at least harass things, but maybe kill things. So he's right there. I let him in. He goes to eat. I make a cup of coffee, like super hot, super strong. And I sit right here and I read a psalm.
Okay.
So that usually coordinates with the date.
Yeah.
And I stretch. And so that's the way I start my day. And because I have 4 kids, this comes back to 4 kids a lot. I needed to feel like I was arriving at the day instead of the day arriving at me.
That's good.
So, I mean, I don't know if you ever got that feeling where it's just like minute 1, we're just like, hey, daddy, just like, boom, there it is. Here's all your problems. Here's the diaper and a feeding and all this and earaches and teething and all that stuff. So I tried to start waking up early and it was just out of sheer survival that I needed to wake up early. So I started that pattern maybe like 10 years ago. And so I sit right here and pray and stretch and have some coffee. So
makes me jealous because I've got, I told you earlier that I work, hours that match up with Norway because that's where my headquarters are. I wake up and I don't want to wake up earlier than 4:45, but for 4:45, I roll over and I walk to the kitchen. I grab a cup of coffee.
Yeah.
And generally like my day starts 5 minutes later. So the day arrives at me, but I get that feeling you're talking about.
Yeah. And you're on the computer, on the phone or both?
Computer.
Really? Yeah.
Yeah. So,
man, that's tough.
But I think it's made me say like, I have to be intentional
Yeah.
with, I have to snag a few more minutes here or there
Yeah.
where I can refocus and then say like, okay, the day is coming to me,
Yes.
but I'm arriving at the day too.
That's right. It's coming in hot, man.
It is
All right.
coming in hot.
Okay. So last question.
Okay.
What's a book everybody should read? I didn't tell you about this, but
You did not.
I've been throwing this at people and The Brothers K. What do you think? Did you ever read A Gentleman in Moscow? Have you read this book? Have you heard of this book?
Oh, I have heard of it. And the guys I normally study with, or not normally, I'd love to start a study with them, but the guy who got me onto Brothers Karamazov originally, he like Gentleman in Moscow, he loves it.
Oh, it's one of my favorite books.
All right, I'm going.
Yeah, it's one of my favorites.
Okay. So then how many of the books that have been recommended to you have you actually?
None. Absolutely none.
Have you started any of them?
No, I haven't.
Okay.
I just want to know. I just kind of want to like where sort of put you on the map or whatever, like what you're reading. Are you still reading? Do you still read a lot? What do you do?
I do read a lot.
Okay.
But do you call listening to audiobooks reading?
I don't know. That's controversial. We talked about that last week on the podcast.
Okay.
Or a couple weeks ago.
All right.
Yeah.
I still try to snag some reading.
Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah.
What is a book everybody should read?
Or what's your favorite book or one of your favorite books? It doesn't have to be the one.
Right. I mean, I will say, having mentioned it already, Brothers Karamazov is something that is amazing, but it's a very philosophical book. So like, I think everybody could read it and get something amazing out of it.
Yeah.
But I don't know if it's for everyone.
Yeah.
And a lot of people might not like it.
And it's like 3 inches thick. Yes.
I'm going to go with a little book called The Name of the Wind.
Okay. Interesting.
Yeah. It's not a little book, actually. It's also kind of thick.
Okay.
But it's Patrick Rothfuss, Name of the Wind. It's fantasy. And the writing is beautiful.
Okay. It's a standalone. You don't need to read anything else.
It is part of a trilogy that he has that he has yet to finish.
Okay.
So really just read it. And if you enjoy it, read the next one.
Okay.
And then forget that he's ever going to finish because he never is.
He's not going to do it.
No. So don't anticipate. But I think, it's the book that I've recommended to the most people probably. And, that's not, I recommend The Reason for God by Tim Keller to everybody.
I love Tim Keller. He's a favorite. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. So that's a different area.
Yeah.
And obviously there's that Bible that I would recommend everybody to.
Yeah.
But Name of the Wind is like, you want a story, you want to get engrossed in fantasy and not fantasy like Harry Potter magic being cast everywhere.
Yeah.
It's more of a beautiful story about music and about, a young man coming of age, and some people don't like it because of that.
Okay.
But I think that it's a worthwhile read.
Very
something to get lost in. And I think we all need an escape occasionally.
Very cool. All right. Well, Ross Wood, thanks for coming on, man.
Joe, thanks so much for having me.
We're like an hour and 5 minutes. So it's a good time.
Sweet.
Thanks for coming on.
Yeah. Thank you.
Adios.
If you liked ideas like these, check out my book, Like a King, Compare Yourself into Happiness, where I compare our lives to the kings of the past, wherever books are sold. Just kidding. It's only on Amazon.